Hello, everyone. Welcome back to What the Flight Radio. So happy to have you here with me today. We have a jam-packed episode. Unfortunately, I did run into some audio issues. I am new to podcasting, and so my podcasting microphone wave file got messed up. So you will notice there is a sound difference in the audio for the first 10 minutes, about 10 minutes, 25 seconds of the show. I am using my backup audio, which is from the shotgun mic on my DSLR camera. Thank you guys for understanding that this is a new platform I am navigating. I still hope you love the show regardless. Let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to What the Flight Radio, a podcast for in-flight crew, frequent flyers, and anyone that gives a about aviation and travel. Happy What the Flight Wednesdays, you guys. Thanks so much for joining me today. And also, happy June. Is that even real? I cannot believe how fast this year is going. I just released a YouTube video on my YouTube channel, Living by the F Word, and I literally talked about how I can't believe how time just feels like it's getting sucked so quickly this year. Like, it just is going so fast. Don't you agree? Anyways, I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I do want to honor our veterans and military service personnel that might be tuning in for this past Memorial Day weekend that happened in the United States. Thank you so much for your service, and we do thank you for our freedom here. Anyways, you guys, I just want to remind you that this podcast is proudly brought to you in part by Living by the F Word. If you're an F Word lover, you enjoy flying, festivals, fashion, fine art, food, fitness, and you live your life with a fulfill it yourself mentality, then you are in the right place. Please consider being my friend on social media. You can find me at What the Flight Radio or at Living by the F Word. Once again, you can find me at WT Flight Radio, or you could find me at Living by the .F Word on some platforms like Instagram and TikTok. And, my Living by the F Word handle, honestly, is kind of all over the place. I wish it was just like solid Living by the F Word, but I had some issues with Instagram when I first started, so it is what it is. If you just search Living by the F Word, you will find me, and I will also have all my socials linked in the show notes, so don't fret, you could find them there. And yeah, just would love to be friends with anyone that is tuning in. Thanks so much for being here once again. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the changes within the airline industry, the aviation industry during the COVID-19 pandemic, and what to expect if you plan on flying this summer 2021. So we have a lot to cover in this episode. I'm basically going to be going over what the airlines are doing to keep you safe and what you as a passenger can do to keep yourself and others safe, including your crew members like me. Thank you. Please, let's help everyone out, okay? So yeah, we're just going to have a general discussion about what it's been like flying during peak COVID versus currently what it's like now over a year later. I'm going to be talking about my experience a little bit. And at the end, I'm going to dive into what the future of flying might look like. So before this episode takes flight, of course, it's super important that you get and receive a safety briefing about the rules and regulations of this podcast. Please fasten your seatbelt in case we hit unexpected turbulence. Topics. After all, we are flying freely around the World Wide Web from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. While it's very unlikely, it still absolutely is possible that we may leave smooth air. So for your safety and the safety of all listeners, please ensure that your attitude was checked with your oversized baggage. If you can't tell, once again, I'm a total geek when it comes to this stuff and these play on words, so I hope you enjoy it. And I also do realize that having a COVID-focused episode can bring in a lot of various opinions and thoughts. So let's just all be aware of that and be respectful to one another, especially if you're in the comments on YouTube. Please just be respectful of one another. I do realize that speaking about COVID is a kind of touchy subject, especially because we've all had a really, really long year dealing with this. Now, with that being said, and in all seriousness, thank you so much for joining me today. It truly means the world to me that you are taking the time to tune into the show. I want you to know that I do value you. I value every single person that has given me feedback about the show so far. I really appreciate all the support with episode 1 and everyone that has reached out to me. There's just been so much good energy with the start of this project. So thank you so much. And let's just say that we have a Wheels Up time in just a few minutes. But before we take off, I would like to ask that if you do enjoy today's episode, please consider sharing it with your friends, get it out there on social media, share it to your Instagram stories, tweet it up. If you're flight crew, make sure you're sharing the shit like you would drama on the jump seat. You know what I'm saying? That is my favorite line of them all. I'm going to be saying it in every episode, so hopefully you don't get sick of it. But shout out to all my fellow flight crew out there. You know what to do. You know the drill. Word of mouth is going to help me out so much. So yeah, please share. Sharing means caring. I'm a big fan of that as well. But yeah, if you're not a flight attendant, I don't know if you ever realize how much the flight attendants talk in the galleys. We're kind of loud. Yeah, we're kind of loud, and a lot of flight attendants complain about a lot of things. I'm even guilty of that. I'll admit it, I'm guilty of that. But anywho, you know what I'm trying to say here. Just help me by sharing this with your friends or with someone that you think would find it useful. Also, let's dive into our aviation lingo for the week. So this is a segment where I highlight a word that's used within the aviation industry. I thought that this would be a fun segment for listeners out there that maybe are not flight crew. Maybe you want to have a better understanding of what some of this terminology is. Maybe you're going to hear me say something in a future episode or in a past episode and you don't really know what that word is. So yeah, I just kind of want to highlight some aviation lingo so that you know what I'm talking about. So this week's word is line. That's right, L-I-N-E. And a line is essentially a term used in the aviation industry, and it means schedule. So depending on the type of line or the type of flight attendant line you are awarded, because other departments also have lines, so like the baggage people have lines and the pilots have lines. So I'm just going strictly off of flight attendant line because I am a flight attendant. But yeah, basically, depending on the type of flight attendant line you're awarded, it can be a line with trips on it, it could be an international line, it could be a domestic line, and if you have enough seniority, you are considered what is called a line holder. So if you don't hold a line, basically depending on the amount of flights and staffing that the company you work for has, that will depend on if you are a line holder or on reserve. If you don't know what reserve means, that was in last week's episode of this aviation lingo segment, episode 1, my aviation story, and I explained what reserve means. So I just got my line for the month of June and I am on reserve. Womp womp. If the aviation gods are out there, I will somehow get what is called a move-up line, which basically is a line that's constructed from trips that the company does not have covered yet. And so they will build these makeshift move-up lines, and they'll build those in seniority order from the most senior reserve down, and they will make a line for you, and it's called a move-up line, and then you are then a line holder. So you have a lot more flexibility when you are a line holder and you have a hard line. It's called a hard line. So lots of terminology here with the word line, which is why I wanted to explain that to you. So I really hope you enjoy this segment. And truth be told, I don't think there's enough trips for me to get a move up line this month. So I'll probably be on reserve. And it kind of sucks, I'm not gonna lie, because I didn't really bid properly. So I am basically only off one weekend for the month of June. So I keep seeing all these parties and festivals and stuff getting announced, and I'm going to be working every weekend. So it is what it is, though. I don't really plan on going to any of my festivals or events until the fall. So it's all good. I will try to make some money, but I feel like you could always make a lot more money when you are a line holder. Anyways, it's Wheels Up time. Let's dive in to this episode. Okay, so I have this episode broken down into sections. So basically, general things to know regarding airlines and how they've been handling COVID, what you as a passenger can do to help yourself and those around you, including your flight crew, stay safe, what it's been like as a flight attendant during peak COVID-19, now and through all the policy changes, and what will the future of flying be like, what to expect after COVID. So there is a lot to get into, and if you're watching on YouTube, obviously you are seeing me glance at my outline. If you're just tuning in, just know I definitely have an outline for all this because there's so much information that I want to cover, and I definitely can't do it from memory. So if you see me on YouTube glancing down, that is what I'm looking at. All right, so let's start off with COVID-19 and what are the airlines doing. So I want to just start off with a funny meme that I saw on Instagram that was actually a tweet, and it said, end quote, "I love how every airline is like, not to brag, but we actually clean the planes now." And this is just so accurate. It was actually like a tweet or quote that I saw, and I really laughed so hard because it's so true. So I don't know if anyone can think back to 2019. I don't know if everyone else's years are all blurred like mine are, but if you could think back to 2019, you were seeing the airlines having so many flights. I mean, there was an all-time high of flights, right? The travel was just booming everywhere. Every airline was full. It was just travel, travel, travel. People were traveling for business, for bachelorette parties, bachelor parties, weddings, concerts, sporting events, vacations. Travel was just at an all-time high. And airlines were seeing growth in their markets with millennials, just because millennials were valuing experiences over possessions, meaning they were valuing booking flights over buying things for their home type of thing. They wanted an experience. So many airlines were hiring like crazy. My company was actually projecting thousands of new hire flight attendants to be coming on the line in 2020 and 2021. So the flow of traffic on and off of the planes and throughout the airports was massive. And now, I mean, what that basically means, what I'm trying to tell you is that the turnover of the aircraft was very fast paced. So basically there was a lot of what they call quick turns. There's so many things that I need to have in this aviation lingo segment. I feel like I need to have more than one word in the segment each week just because I'm constantly explaining things. But yeah, basically a quick turn is when the airplane comes in and the cleaning crew has about 8 to 12 minutes to clean a full aircraft so that they can reboard the plane and send the plane back out. So yeah, I mean, you were seeing basically these cleaning crews on timers cleaning aircraft. So obviously, if you think about it, even a narrow body aircraft, cleaning an entire plane 8 to 12 minutes, think about that. That's a lot of seats. We're talking about hundreds of seats and a few people on the cleaning crew. And, some companies even have their own flight attendants clean the planes. So yeah, you're seeing this very fast-paced cleaning, and yeah, the environment, regardless of who was cleaning the plane, basically what I'm trying to say is the planes really were not cleaned that well or nearly as thorough as they're being cleaned right now during COVID. So it's mind-blowing to me that during all that, during peak travel before COVID, people would still walk around the aircraft and in the lavatories without their shoes on, with just their socks on or even barefoot. Oh my God. I just can't even believe it. And, I feel like this is going to have to honestly be another topic or maybe listener submission podcast of all the things you absolutely should not be doing on airplanes. But yeah, that is one of them. Do not take your shoes off, please. It's gross. But yeah, anyways, the aircrafts are being cleaned better than they ever were. That's pretty much my point with all this. So you're probably more likely to catch a form of some type of coronavirus prior to all the COVID-19 cleaning programs that airlines have in effect. So I did research some airlines programs, cleaning programs that they have basically conjured up for COVID. So I'm just going off of airlines that are, within the United States, that's where I'm from. So if you're listening from another country, that's why I maybe did not mention your airline or your airline of travel. But yeah, just going to be covering some United States airlines here. But so we have American Airlines. They have their Clean Commitment program. Delta's program is called Delta Clean. United's program is called Clean Plus. Southwest Airlines is called Promise. And then I couldn't find anything for Spirit, Alaska, JetBlue, Frontier, Allegiant, or Hawaiian Airlines. They do all have information on their website regarding cleaning the aircraft and COVID response, but they don't have like an official name for their cleaning program like some of these other major airlines in the United States. So yeah, with these major airlines having this specific program in effect, basically what you're going to be seeing is partnerships with brands like Clorox for wipes and sanitation. You're also going to see partnerships with clinics that provide feedback as far as how COVID spreads and what airlines can do to prevent the spreading of the virus for both employees and passengers. So with that, a lot of the following things I'm going to talk about were put into place and are still in place over this last year, still living through COVID, right? So yeah, I'm going to be breaking down what airlines have been doing in partnership with these health and safety professionals and what you can expect at the airport from check-in, boarding, in-flight service, and deplaning. All right, so let's start off with check-in at the airport. So basically, airlines are requiring all customers, including employees or passengers that are traveling space available or standby, to complete a health assessment. It's basically a self-assessment check and check-in process. So typically this is going to be a form when you check in for your flight where you answer health questions such as, have you experienced symptoms like fever, shortness of breath, coughing, headache, chills in the last few days? Have you tested positive for COVID-19 in the past few days? Stuff like that. Now, obviously someone can have COVID, be asymptomatic, or people can, of course, lie about these things. But for the most part, this is just a form that needs to be done at any type of public service, basically. So you'll even see forms like this if you have a doctor's visit, a dentist visit, etc. So yeah, the airlines are also requiring these forms, and in addition to airlines offering passengers to switch to a different flight if the flights are full. So yeah, what you're going to be seeing as of May 2021 is pretty much full airports and full planes. I just flew this past weekend on a trip, and yeah, all the flights were full, you guys. Like the airlines aren't putting up as many aircraft yet. They're only at about, I would say, 50% of what they used to fly pre-COVID. So it may seem busy to all of us, but it's definitely not as busy as it was. But yeah, they can't really afford to be putting up aircraft because we're still working through this crisis, if that makes sense. Basically, these flights are getting fuller because with the vaccination rollout, things are picking back up. So if people are obviously feeling a lot more comfortable, that's for sure. I think that's why you'll see all these fuller planes. That being said, when the vaccine wasn't in place and I was flying in 2020 during COVID, there would be passengers that would complain once they were on the plane that there wasn't enough social distancing if people were seated next to one another. So, I want to be like really professional here and remain professional, just because obviously I'm trying to be professional about my job. I love my job. I love my customers. I am a people person and value my customers. So I don't want to push anyone's buttons here, but basically everyone's just doing their best to survive during this crisis. So that includes the airlines, which really have financially taken a major hit. So if you are choosing to fly, that is your choice. That is your risk, and it's not the airline's fault. I just kind of wanted to say that because I haven't really seen it so much now with vaccination rollouts. I haven't seen anyone complain about full flights, not once. But yeah, basically just understand that you have the option to switch your flight for the most part on most airlines if you aren't comfortable with the flight being full, and you will get a notification that your flight is full if you want to switch it. So yeah, that was just some issues I was seeing peak COVID, which is understandable, but at the same time, you're choosing to fly during a pandemic. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, yeah, for the most part, things are definitely getting way better. But just keep that in mind if you are still a little skeptical about flying. All right. What else will you see during the check-in process? You're going to see sneeze cards. So these are, the clear kind of shields that you see at counters in most public spaces now. So you'll see them at the ticketing counters. You're going to see them at the TSA checkpoints. And it's basically a clear plexiglass divider that keeps the employees divided from the passenger to prevent germs from being transferred. Also, it is federal law that everyone in the United States wears a mask within the airport and on the aircraft, including crew rest areas that you might not see. So if anyone is concerned about that, just know that employees are also required to wear a mask at all times when on airport property. And employees are also required to get their temperature checked prior to check-in of their duty day. So every single employee that is working must do this as a precaution for them, other employees, and passengers. Also, employees have access to hand sanitizer basically everywhere. You will see Kleenex wipes. You will see, sanitation wipes. You will see hand sanitizer basically all throughout the ticketing counters and everywhere. Also, something else that you'll see for the check-in process is self-scanning. This is a huge thing that's in effect right now. So basically, everyone will use their phone. You will use your phone to have your boarding pass on it. And you're not going to have a paper ticket for the most part. I mean, they still give paper tickets out if you had to change your seat or things like that. But for the most part, you are going to be putting your phone down on the scanner to go through TSA to get on the plane boarding. You're going to touch your phone, or you're going to put the boarding pass onto the reader. The agent isn't going to touch it or anything. They're basically trying to limit the touch points of everyone. So yeah, just make sure that whatever airline you're flying, you download their in-flight app so that you can, first of all, have free movies. Most of these airlines have free movies through their app. Just, make sure you're on top of stuff like that. But yeah, if you have your in-flight app for their boarding pass as well, that will really help out too. Also, let's see, at the gate, you're not going to see things like self-serving treats. So some airlines sometimes provide snack carts if there's a heavy delay and, maybe food isn't open or something like that. They would provide water and snacks as an I'm sorry, that we're delayed. Here's something, for you, even though it really doesn't help most of the time. But, it's a courtesy thing. Yeah, things like this you won't really see. They've been eliminated for the time being. All right, so for boarding and deplaning, seating, and safety, they have less than touch points for boarding. So I kind of went over that already. But yeah, boarding in economy on some airlines have been boarding back to front. So the last row of the aircraft all the way in the back to the front. Deplaning front to back on a row-by-row basis to promote social distancing in the jetway and the aircraft, which, truth be told, it's not really working that well. Everyone's kind of just acting like how they were pre-COVID. Everyone's kind of just piling on top of each other. There's no 6-foot gap, but the airlines are trying to do their best. So if you hear an announcement like that, just know it is part of company policy for a lot of airlines to be saying this stuff, to be trying to do their part. But we can't control how everyone is, acting or doing their part. I'm just letting you guys know that my puppy just woke up and she's staring at me and she might bark. I'm trying so hard to record and do everything when she's sleeping. And, I just played with her, so I don't understand. She should be really tired. I just played outside with her. Anyways, let's get back into the episode. So yes, I went through the boarding, but yeah, things are constantly changing is something that you should know. Basically, things probably will change even by the time that I publish this episode. So just be mindful of that. And also just be mindful that airlines can implement this procedure, but like I said, no one is really listening. So everyone still stands up when the seatbelt sign goes off. People are deplaning from the back, even though they were told to remain in their seats. Things like that are happening, but airline staff are just doing their best. As far as seating, some airlines are still blocking middle seats. Some airlines are doing what's called a soft block. So they might just need to block some seats so that flight attendants can social distance. You would see this a lot, like during peak COVID time. You would see some flight attendants not sitting next to each other on the jump seat because it was like just a very scary time. So they were trying to social distance the flight attendants too. But for the most part, I think a lot of that has resumed back to normal. But yeah, some airlines still are kind of doing a soft block. But like I said, looks like summer flying is back. It looks like the airports are pretty busy. Planes have been pretty full. And yeah, I don't know if you should expect blocked seats much further or much longer, especially with more and more people getting vaccinated. All right. So if you haven't flown in a while, you might not know that even safety demonstrations were being modified to limit touch points with the safety equipment. So for example, flight attendants would not touch oxygen masks. They basically would just hold the safety card up. They wouldn't do the life vest. So yeah, folks, listen up. If you are not flight crew, please read that safety card. Okay. I can't stress this enough that most incidents happen on the ground, during takeoff, during landing. And yeah, read that safety card and know what you need to do in case of an emergency. All right. Moving on to in-flight service. So on the aircraft, the service was heavily modified, and lots of the service elements were eliminated so that crews were and are not touching items from other people's food, or from other people, such as food, drink, and credit cards. So like they're trying not to have people be touching multiple things, basically. Also, in first class cabins, you're seeing stuff like glassware was being eliminated. Also, hot towel service is being suspended. So if you've never traveled in first class, basically they usually have glassware, and they basically suspended that, and they were using plastic cups. Commonly, what you're going to see across the board in economy cabins on flights over 2 hours on most major airlines are prepackaged snack with a variety of snacks and a bottle of water. So upon request, if you want a beverage, there usually is a beverage cart, and usually a beverage is being provided. You can ask for a drink upon request. And yeah, flights under that time, usually they don't really get provided with anything. So things were super limited during peak COVID, but things are definitely improving now. So now that we're heading into summer 2021, you might see some types of service elements coming back into play. For example, a lot of the airlines now are probably going to introduce alcohol back into their in-flight service, and also their onboard snack menu you might be seeing coming back. But yeah, for the most part, pre-boarded, pre-sealed snack bag option that is complimentary is what you will see. And also, as far as airport restaurants, lots of them are open. So you basically will see a lot of these open now, whereas in March 2020, even through the summer of 2020 and earlier this year, all these airport restaurants were closed. You basically were only seeing... Kia, really? My puppy is just crying and crying. Okay, yeah, so I was talking about airport restaurants. So basically, only fast food restaurants were really open. And it was like really hard if you had a long day of travel. Most flight crew, they bring their own food. But if you're not bringing your own food, like if you were a passenger and you had a long day of travel, it was really, really hard to find food. Like only like those like quick grab and go snack places were open. So it was difficult. Yeah, it was difficult if you had a long day of travel. What else are you going to see? So in both cabins, you will see airlines implement small things like if a customer wants a refill, typically they're going to provide them with a completely new cup. They're going to get a brand new cup. Whereas pre-COVID, many times we would just refill their cups. So like if they were drinking wine, we would bring the wine bottle over and just pour a glass of wine. If they were drinking a mixed drink, we would just give them more ice and refill their cup. Not anymore. Basically, like, so there is, I feel like, a lot more waste coming out of this, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Like, it's just to prevent the spread of germs. Now, as far as cleaning the aircraft, I haven't really been out on the line too much since last year. I did work a trip this past weekend, but like I said, they are still cleaning the planes way better than they were pre-COVID. And this is what I would imagine. Basically, the cleaning process is the same, because even though we are seeing a light at the end of this tunnel, you know what I mean? Like, we really, I feel like, are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. We still very much are affected and still working through COVID. It just is what it is. So I do want to say that the cleaning procedures are still in effect at most airlines, and that cleaning standards on aircraft are meeting the CDC's guidelines, if not exceeding their standards. So this is how they are cleaning the aircrafts. Sanitizing surfaces after each flight, including lavatories, galleys, seat backs, screens, window shades, armrests, tray tables, PA speakers, and implementing enhanced aircraft deep cleaning processes, especially if someone with a confirmed case of COVID has traveled on that aircraft. Now, I will be completely honest, this is something that never happened. Cleaning crews never clean the galleys. You know, for the most part, flight attendants would straighten out the galley for the next crew. So this is like a major improvement. Also, window shades, all those high touch points, like the air, you know, where you turn your air on and the light above your seat, none of that was ever cleaned. It was really only your tray tables and, you know, your seating area was like cleaned up, and they would like have like a little roller vacuum. That was it. Like, now it's like super clean compared to it ever was. Speaking of like seating areas, so, you know, the disinfecting of every tray table, and I can honestly testify that I did see this, and I have seen that every single tray table was turned down and cleaned. Like I said, I haven't flown in a long time, really, and when I did fly this past weekend, I was getting off the aircraft, so I wasn't staying on the aircraft to see the cleaning process. So I'm not really sure, but I would say that, yeah, most airlines are probably still doing this. And they're also usually giving the passengers wipes or sanitation wipes during the boarding process so that you can do it yourself. Okay, this is something that is new and pretty much across the board on all airlines, which is a ESS. So that stands for electrostatic spray. And the electrostatic spray is being done on all flights on all airlines. And it's basically a technology that is beneficial because it combines a highly effective disinfectant with compressed air. So what that means is there is an electrocharge of this machine that turns the disinfectant that's within the machine, these liquid, disinfectant, is getting sprayed as small droplets. And when it's sprayed, the charge drops of disinfectant adhere to the surfaces with a strong force, which means the drops do not fall to the ground or drip off any surfaces. So this coverage is really effective because it's spreading over, under, and around surfaces. It's getting into hard to reach places for maximum cleaning coverage. Also, most people know this, but you have the HEPA filters on airlines. So HEPA stands for High Efficiency Particulate Air. These filters are a mechanical air filter that are used in hospitals as well. And HEPA filters work by forcing air through a fine mesh that traps harmful particles such as pollen, pet dander, dust mites, and tobacco smoke. So essentially, with these HEPA filters, the air on the aircraft is refreshed every 2 to 4 minutes with air from the outside of the aircraft or from air that has passed through the HEPA filter already. So there's so many videos that you guys can check out on YouTube about this that explain how HEPA filters work on board the aircraft. So just feel free to do that research yourself if you're doubting anything. But these are basically a hospital grade filter that are on the aircraft. Also, you will see airlines, along with many other transportation services, they're using a Zuno, which is a brand of a microbe shield. So the Zuno microbe shield, it basically is an EPA registered antimicrobial. How can I see if I could say this fast or not? Antimicrobial coating that forms a long-last bond with surfaces and inhibits growth of microbes and additional cleaning procedure. Wow, say that 10 times fast. All right. Also, they are removing a lot of onboard magazines or items that multiple people would be touching. So you'll see this on a lot of the aircrafts you're flying as well. Basically, it's only the safety card. I don't know if anyone remembers, but most of the time the airlines would have like some type of like duty-free magazine or in-flight service magazine or flight maps of where they fly to, and, things, basically like a type of magazine that focuses on travel points that they travel to. Unfortunately, they had to discard that just because they don't want too many people touching them. You know what I mean? All right. So we basically have now covered everything that goes on, once you get to the airport, check in, once you're actually on the aircraft, the in-flight service, the cleaning of the aircraft. We've covered all that. So now let's cover what you as a passenger should know, how to keep yourself and others safe. And this whole section, honestly, is pretty much common sense. And I'm pretty sure that most of you know this already, but just in case you are, basically flying for the first time in a long time, it's just important to know. So if you do not feel good, stay home. If you know that you tested positive, please stay home, period. Also, please practice social distancing when you can, which is almost impossible right now with full flights and full airports. But if you could listen to your flight crew as far as the deplaning process and not stand up and be on top of one another, that would help and be greatly appreciated, especially by those that, still have concerns regarding COVID. But for the most part, those people that have concerns probably are not flying right now. We've been hearing this a lot the past year. Wash your hands often and thoroughly with soap and water. I'm sure everyone's so sick of all these tips, but I just had to include it on this podcast episode because it's just information that is still relevant and important if you don't want to contract COVID or any type of sickness, really. So airplane bathrooms, they do have hot water. And for some reason, people seem to miss this. So yeah, you can turn that hot water on, you guys. Use it. Also, please carry with you alcohol-based sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol content. That is just a good secondary option that you should have in your carry-on regardless. And also TSA now allows a larger amount of hand sanitizer through security. So definitely scope out tsa.gov. I want to say that it's 12 ounces, but don't quote me on that. Just go to tsa.gov and check. I don't really know the sizing because I'm flight crew. I am allowed extra liquids anyway. So yeah, if you're a frequent flyer or someone that's not a frequent flyer that is planning on flying this summer or later in the fall this year, definitely just check out the TSA regulations. But I do think that they changed it where, you can fly with more liquids. That being said, I just kind of wanted to pop in a little bit of a story time about this man I experienced during boarding this one time. This was pre-COVID. We literally were welcoming passengers aboard, welcome aboard, welcome aboard. Hi, how are you? Blah, blah. And this guy just literally went, achoo. Did not cover his nose, his mouth, anything. Didn't use his elbow. It was, oh my God. It was honestly, throw up worthy. It was disgusting. I can't imagine how much it spread. And so these are the type of people that are flying, you guys. I mean, and these are the type of people that even now we have masks on. I mean, this is stuff that we see. And so I don't know, maybe up your manners up a little bit. I don't know if you're one of those people, you don't know how to cover your nose or any of that after all of COVID. This is your little friendly reminder. All right. So yeah, also please avoid touching your face. Of course, this still applies, but I feel like a lot of people are forgetting the basics of preventing germs being spread. Even myself, I wear contacts and things like that. And sometimes you just forget and you rub your eye or if you have allergies, you go with your hand and wipe your nose or something like that. And you just forget, but really try not to touch your face, especially if you're traveling. Don't touch your eyes, your mouth, anything, your nose without a tissue. And definitely wash your hands frequently. Just, keep all that up. Also, just stay mindful about yourself and others' well-being. this is like a really sensitive topic just because no one really knows what anyone else is going through or has gone through from this. So you have no idea if the person you are sitting next to lost someone from COVID, or their whole family got the virus and it was a huge financial hardship, or, you know, COVID really could have affected someone negatively, even if you weren't affected by it negatively. So people are just having different struggles with this virus and this entire global pandemic. And so, you know, I think that if you're going to travel, and as travel resumes and flights start to get booked more, it's just important to keep this in mind. Like, it's important to be sensitive of other people. All right. So let's get into COVID-19 as a flight attendant. So yeah, hopefully I'll get to report back more in depth once I start flying more, but I'm just going to discuss what it was like flying during peak COVID, because I was flying a lot at that point in March 2020, and then it came to like a screeching halt. So I remember in the beginning of March 2020, when I was in the middle of a trip, the flights were kind of light. So I felt like something was going on, but it wasn't really being taken seriously. It wasn't really being talked about. Like, it really wasn't that big of an issue, right? So then Ultra Music Festival, which is pretty much actually a festival that changed my life. It's a huge electronic music festival in Miami, for anyone that doesn't know. It got canceled, and it's usually in March every year. So it got canceled. That was like the first thing where I was like, okay, this is like a red flag. But at the same time, I didn't really believe it. I was kind of just like, oh, the city of Miami hates Ultra. They just, you know, are trying to do whatever they can to not have Ultra. You know, I just like didn't believe it. And I was just like, why is this happening? This is ridiculous. There was just like this big stigma that this virus was not that big of a deal. So yeah, then I actually went to Crossed, which is another electronic music festival, but it's held in San Diego. And this was the first week of March. And after that, I was supposed to go to Los Angeles to bring my little sister for her spring break. And it's been her dream to go to Los Angeles and California her entire life. She's very much like California dreaming, if you know what I mean. But then everything got shut down. And so, yeah, basically by mid-March, everything was like changing, and we were just in complete lockdowns, as you all remember, and the planes were empty. I mean, empty. And me and my sister ended up going to a family friend's in Florida just so she could like get away. But as we went down there, like states started like locking down their borders and like weren't allowing people to travel from other different states. And it was just like so fast paced how it all happened, I feel like. And so I actually was picking up work trips because there were a lot of these trips that were falling in with a lot of deadheads. And I'm going to have that word in another aviation lingo segment. But yeah, basically when you deadhead, it's just when your company is transporting you as a passenger, but you're getting paid. So there was a lot of trips that were like falling apart, and with deadheads where you're getting paid to not even actually work. But even if you were working, there was no one on the plane. So it was just like very easy money, if that makes sense. Like kind of boring, but also very easy. And so I remember I picked up this trip that was like, it was 16 hours flight time. So that's how we get paid as flight attendants. And I'll cover that separately in a whole other episode. I'll get into how we get paid and things like that. But I remember that it was a 16-hour trip that I worked in less than 24 hours. So yeah, I basically only worked one flight. I remember it was like, I flew down to Miami on a deadhead. Then I did the working flight, which was from Miami to San Francisco. And then it was supposed to deadhead back the next day. So it was essentially supposed to be a 2-day trip, but when you're a line holder, you can deviate from that deadhead and still get paid from it. So I basically deviated from the next day flight, and I deadheaded back on the red eye that same night. So literally within 24 hours, I got paid for like, it was a 16-hour one day, basically is what I'm trying to say. It was so sick. Like there was like stuff like that was happening. And I was like racking up all these hours because I thought I was going to get furloughed in April. Like I really just didn't know what was going to happen. Everything was changing so suddenly and the airports were really like ghost towns. It was very eerie. It was so creepy. Like any flight crew that's listening knows, if you were flying during that time, how creepy it was that some of these major airports that usually have millions of people in them were ghost towns. Yeah. So, of course, then in April, I actually was pay protected for a lot of my trips. I obviously didn't get furloughed at that point, but I just didn't know. But yeah, I was pay protected in April, and there was a lot of flights that were canceling. And so we were just getting paid for them because they were even though they were getting canceled, which was pretty awesome. And yeah, things were kind of hectic, though, because if you did have a trip and you were on a layover, you kind of would sometimes get stuck there. So there was like a lot of layovers I was having for like 30 to 40 hours because since flights were canceling, they couldn't get you back to base, or they couldn't get you back, that same day. So yeah, it was kind of like crazy, but I mean, I did enjoy myself on those layovers, even though I kind of had to like stay in my room. At that point, there was like a lot of like live DJ streaming going on, and I was kind of just riding this wave, enjoying my time off. And I really got to kind of build my YouTube channel a little bit with the time off. So that was nice. Of course, then for anyone that's unfamiliar, not in the aviation industry, we did receive government assistance. So a lot of the airlines through the Payroll Support and CARES Act got a payroll support program that basically kept us connected with our healthcare, with getting paid. And that was, honestly, it was a lifesaver because to even think about, the time where I did get furloughed and having no health insurance during pandemic, it was like absolutely so fucking scary. I think I said that in the first episode too, but it really was. But yeah, basically I was building my YouTube channel. I was maybe flying like one trip a month and I was still getting paid. So it was good for me personally. But yeah, if we fast forward to last week, like I said, the airports were full. We're seeing a lot of lines again in TSA. We're seeing full aircraft, and I haven't really had anyone complain that the flights are full, like I said. So, in fact, I think that like things are really looking good, in my opinion. There's this major improvement compared to like all the stories I was just telling you, yeah, summer months and airlines are increasing flights. So it's just, I guess it's really good for everyone. It's good if you're a traveler and you're planning on traveling internationally. Just, make sure you're reading up on the country specific COVID instructions for entry requirements. Every country is different and operating differently at this point. So just make sure you're staying up to date with that. But I would say, like, based off of like what it was like during peak COVID, like what I just explained to you through now, is just like it's looking really good. I do want to just like touch upon like what I think was the hardest part of all this flying during peak COVID. And I think that was just like having a lot of time off because of the reduction in flights, and then actually getting furloughed. And then once you're recalled and then we got requalified, the fact is like things were just constantly changing, and flight attendants already need to remember so much. Like we already need to remember a lot of safety things. And so to keep up with procedures that are getting changed on a weekly basis, because things are constantly changing and progressing, you really need to stay up to date with all this information that your company is giving you. And that could kind of be like really hard. I will say, like, working this last weekend for the first time in 8 months, I felt like a total newbie. I felt like things were a little chaotic. I had some scheduling issues. I was trying to sort a lot of things out for myself and my crew because I was the lead flight attendant. We had a very delayed flight and people were upset, and it was just a lot for a first trip back. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was overwhelming for a first trip back. It was really like, welcome back. But yeah, luckily for the most part, I didn't have to be a mask police officer, because being a mask police was definitely so difficult last year in 2020. There were a lot of people that did not want to comply or wear masks, or would wear masks the wrong way. So you constantly had to be checking and going out in the aisle and making sure people were wearing their masks. So, I mean, we still are constantly checking because the airlines are giving fines and removing people from flights and banning people from flights with them indefinitely. So until it's a go to not wear masks, just wear your mask on the airplanes, please. Just comply to make your life, your flight attendant's life, and everyone else's life easier. And to wrap up this episode on what does the future of flying with COVID-19 look like, I really think it's looking good. Like I said before, I just think that the airports and countries are working together to make things more seamless. We're seeing a lot of things being done digitally with no touch screens and touch points. Luckily, we are seeing a lot of states lifting their mask mandates. And yeah, I mean, in the United States, at least, like basically a lot of the mask rules are changing. If you're outdoors, you don't need to be wearing a mask, even if you're in a gym. Like, so I'm from New Jersey. If you're in the gym, you don't need to wear a mask. In hair salons, you don't need to wear a mask if you're fully vaccinated. So, I think there are a decent amount of people that have been vaccinated, so they're not wearing masks. And I do think that we are, truly on our way back to a new normal. And yeah, I just really look forward to seeing all my colleagues at work. I look forward to seeing my friends traveling again. And I'm just really happy to see the world open up. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and I will be back with aviation news. All right, welcome back for aviation news. So in episode 1, I introduced aviation news segment. I'm not sure if you guys are a fan of it yet. I really hope that you're enjoying this. But yeah, pretty much in episode 1, I did a general April news update for the entire month of that particular episode. And for this episode, I'm going to be doing like a month of May news segment. And then hopefully by episode 3, I'll be back on track to do just weekly news for that specific week. But yeah, just remember that I'm going to be recording these episodes way in advance. And some of the news by the time the episode comes out, you might already have been aware of. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I also am kind of thinking maybe I might make this a bi-weekly segment just because there's so much aviation news out there. Maybe I can mix this up with another segment. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. Feel free to email me with any feedback at radio@livingbytheupward.com. All right. So for the month of May, here are some aviation news, and not just aviation news, but travel news in general. This is a aviation podcast, but it's for people that love to travel as well. So you might see some travel things sprinkled in there. So let me start with some happy news. The happiest place on earth, Disneyland, California, is now welcoming out-of-state visitors again, starting on June 15th. Also, as far as airport updates, since I'm on Los Angeles, let's just go there. So LAX, their $1.7 billion international airport concourse has been opened. This concourse is known as the West Gates and will serve both international and domestic flights. The project involves all the airport passenger terminals, new facilities, and automated people mover train, consolidated rental car facility, and new parking structure. And also there's a new metro station that is now finally connecting the airport to LA County's light rail system. So that's big news for anyone in LA. That has been under construction for a long time. So congrats if that is your home airport. We're also still seeing Salt Lake City Airport continue on with their $4.1 billion airport renovation and a tunnel that they are building, which will lessen walking distances for passengers. Up next, we have that I missed an airline birthday in last week's episode. So I'm sure I'm missing a lot of airline birthdays. There are a lot of airlines out there, you guys. And honestly, I am not that great at wishing people a happy birthday, but happy 75th birthday to Ethiopian Airlines, who also just won a gold award at the 15th annual Ghana Africa Business Awards. Also, now let's get into some older news. It is the 40th year anniversary of American Airlines Flight 191, Chicago to Los Angeles, ORD to LAX. So for anyone that's not familiar, this was a devastating airline crash that really led to better safety checks. Almost every airline crash has led to something that is in effect today. And so this was one that really made airlines step up their maintenance checks and the FAA checking up on the maintenance checks. It was a very devastating crash. So this crash has really kind of helped the aviation industry. And it was the 40th year anniversary this past week. All right. Some other news that kind of might not be what you want to hear, but they are projecting that European air traffic is unlikely to reach pre-crisis levels until 2024 at the earliest. So this isn't really a surprise to me because my company had disclosed that they weren't expecting international travel to come back until 2024. But with the vaccination rollouts, I was kind of being a little more hopeful. So seeing this news headline kind of bummed me out. They're still only estimating 50% of 2019 traffic for all of 2021, which is about 5.5 million flights. That's still a ton of flights, but yeah, we're just not seeing what we were seeing pre-crisis. Norwegian Airlines exits bankruptcy after slimming their fleet down to 51 aircraft, and they shed about 2/3 of their fleet. This was a huge one, you guys. I'm sure so many people have heard about this. Southwest flight attendant loses 2 teeth after an altercation with a passenger from Sacramento to San Diego. The 28-year-old female passenger was charged with felony battery. The non-compliance issue was upon landing for refusing to put her tray table up and her seatbelt on. Now, let me say this. I saw the video, you guys. This was fucking insane. I am just genuinely shocked at the behavior of this passenger and just what this flight attendant had to deal with. Now, with that, the video, she literally decked this flight attendant in the face and her whole cheek was bleeding. And luckily there was a passenger that stepped in, a man that stepped in and said, you don't ever touch a flight attendant like that. Meanwhile, someone that was recording the video said she went at her first. So I don't know if she was saying the flight attendant went at her first, but I just cannot imagine a flight attendant going at a passenger, no matter the circumstances. No flight attendant wants to lose their job. It's literally one of the best jobs in the world. I just can't imagine her going at her first. And that's what's so tricky about these videos. But that man, the passenger that intervened, basically said to this person, so politely, he literally turned at this person and said, "Shut the fuck up." And then he turned around to the flight attendant and was like, "I got you, ma'am." And that man, I just want to give you a shout out. I want you on my flight. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I want people that are going to back us up because we deal with so much shit, you guys. It is crazy. Anyways, with that being said, according to Southwest Airlines, there has been about 477 incidents of violence and unruly behavior on their flights between April 8th and May 15th. That is insane. That is too much. That is ridiculous. And all I keep thinking about is that alcohol isn't even on planes right now. They eliminated alcohol service. So a lot of airlines are going to start implementing alcohol service. Actually, by the time this podcast is released for the month of June for summer flying, a lot of airlines are going to be introducing alcohol back. And it's just crazy. But, Southwest, they basically confirmed that they're going to resume alcohol service starting this summer on flights. But then after this incident, they said they're not going to. I mean, I don't blame them. If they have 477 incidents of violence, that means that physical violence, obviously. You know what I mean? That's just insane. So I'm wondering what other airlines are going to be doing. We shall see. All right, next up, we have Air India is experience high call volumes at their customer care service numbers. This is probably very obvious. I don't know if there's anyone out there that is planning on going to India, but they have been having a major spike in COVID cases. They've been having an extremely difficult time over there. So that's my guess as far as flights are probably getting canceled a lot. And so you can find their WhatsApp number, their website, and their email on their Twitter account, which is at Air India IN. It's at Air India IN. And basically, they request that if you do need to call customer care, that you are making sure that you're traveling within 72 hours before you contact them. And last up for this segment, we have Swiss Air Force F-5 crashes with pilot successfully ejecting from the aircraft. This was a pretty interesting article that I found. So this is going to be definitely for any of my military people out there that are interested in that. I personally was interested in it. The crash did happen in a remote area, so no one was injured. The pilot did successfully eject himself and survive. So I thought that was pretty remarkable and aviation newsworthy. That pretty much wraps this episode up, you guys. I know it was long. I know it was jam-packed with a lot of information. I just felt like it was a topic that a lot of people are curious about because a lot of people have not flown, or if they have flown or they're about to fly, they don't really know what to expect. So there's been a lot of changes, and I really hope that this was helpful for you. Don't forget to connect with me on social media at WT Flight Radio on all social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You can find me there, or you can follow my brand account, which is Living by the F Word. Thanks so much for tuning in. I will see you in the next episode. Bye.